Pink Floyd's Animals only has 5 songs. Roger Waters is credited on all 5, 4 of them alone. By now, Roger was in full flow with the ideas, but he was also really keeping Dave down and frustrating him deliberately. David Gilmour co-wrote Dogs, a 17-minute masterpiece that takes up nearly half the entire album. But in the music business, songwriting royalties are often split per song, not per minute. That means the man who wrote half the music of the record only collected about 10% of the publishing. Meanwhile, the 2 shortest tracks on the album, barely 90 seconds each, are actually just one song Roger Waters cut in two. By splitting it, he turned one credit into 2. I formed this band for God's sake, and I helped Roger a hell of a lot, because he wasn't a musician when we started. Every fault line that eventually shattered Pink Floyd is visible right there, printed on the back of the sleeve. This is how the math of Animals broke the band.
And it became clear to me after doing one or two, from the conversation backstage and from the response in front of the stage and for the things that happened afterwards and from the injuries and the this and the that and the general vibe I got, that this was no longer musicians writing and performing songs. And, well, it was, but that was no longer important. What had become important was the gross.
By 1977, Pink Floyd had moved into Britannia Row, their own private studio. Without an outside producer or a label executive to tell them no, Roger Waters took total control of the narrative. The concept was loosely inspired by George Orwell's Animal Farm. Dogs as the ruthless ladder climbers, pigs as the tyrants, and sheep as the mindless masses.
A decision was made to take this very artistic photograph of a large pig flying over Battersea Power Station. And so the large pig was built and inflated and taken down to Battersea. And there was a crew of riggers and inflators and everything else. And there was also a highly paid marksman whose job was to deflate the pig with a well-placed shot in the event of it escaping.
No one disputes that the lyrics and the concept were Roger's, but the music was a different story. Dogs was originally a song called You Got to Be Crazy. The band had been playing it for years in live. Roger and I went out in the big room with 2 guitars and wrote the chord sequence for the verses together. And he went off and wrote the words. Gilmour wrote the vast majority of that music. It's the only shared credit on the album, and it takes up almost all of side 1. But look at Pigs on the Wing. It's a short acoustic love song Roger wrote for his wife. He split it down the middle. Part 1 opens the album, Part 2 closes it. To a royalty accountant, those are 2 separate compositions, 1 extra credit for Roger with 0 extra work. When Roger left in 1985, he called Pink Floyd a spent force. He honestly believed that because he owned the majority of the math on the recent albums, the brand belonged to him. Pink Floyd is a spent force creatively. He sued Gilmour and Mason to stop them from using the name. He lost. The men who stood together to create 17-minute epic Dogs spent the next decade communicating only through lawyers. I spent 20 years of my life building that name up. I see no reason why I should give that up just because one guy says he doesn't want to do it anymore. You'd think after 40 years the dust would have settled, but in 2018 a new remix of Animals was completed. It sat on a shelf unreleased for 4 years. Why? Because Roger and David couldn't agree on the liner notes. Roger wanted the notes to detail exactly who did what, essentially highlighting his dominance on the sessions.
And this is true today as it was then, that like I said before, rules are made to be broken, and we don't, and we've never had any sacred idea about what we think we ought to be or what we ought to sound like. So anytime we feel like trying something else out, we'll just go and try it. And if some of the fans do or don't like it, it's not really particularly relevant, because that's not the way we do things. That's not why we do things. We do them for us first, and if the fans like it, they like it.
David felt the notes were revisionist and downplayed the band's collective effort. He has for the last 35 years told a lot of whooping porky pies about who did what in Pink Floyd when I was still in charge. We have a video about that in more detail, so you might want to watch that. It's pretty well made, I think. The remix finally came out in 2022, but only after the liner notes were removed entirely. Roger eventually published his version of the story on his own website. Even half a century later, Animals is an album that cannot be released without a fight over who truly owns the music. Have a good day, and thank you for watching.